Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Double. I know you probably are thinking to yourself, did I just see an ES8 in the thumbnail? Aren't the Moore's Law followers on YouTube going to get a notification that a piece of gear that's older than 18 months is being demonstrated? Calm down, everything's cool. Nobody's coming to take you away or me away because of old gear. In fact, I'm going to show you how to use my probably favorite piece of gear from the past decade that BOSS has released, along with one of the newest things that they have, the BOSS IR2-2. I want to just not take amps to gigs. A lot of my demos I use amps for because I think that's a good way to demo gain pedals and certain things. However, I don't mind taking my 50-pound pedal board, but I really don't want to take like an amp anymore. I love my stuff, but I would love to find an alternative. And if you, like me, would like to figure out how to use your well set up pedal board, especially something with an ES8, well then this video is for you. I am going to briefly at the end of the video talk about the signal flow, but what I want to do is discuss the actual amp and cabinet IR-2 and how to set it up to change channels and also store your channel changes as you select presets. So as I switch through the different presets, I have my IR2 set up to receive a pulse signal that will then allow me to change sounds on the IR2. So you can go between that really nice squeaky clean twin sound that is in here, and then maybe set it for a high gain sound when you go over to the red channel. That's the great thing, in my opinion, about the IR2 and why I kind of shied away from the IR200. I have enough digital stuff going on that when it comes to setting up really an amp, what is an amp? And in this case, it's going to be simulating an amp and a cabinet. When it comes to all of that, I just want a tone. I don't want to have a lot of things to mess with. I don't want to have to store a whole bunch of settings. This gives you the option to switch between two sounds. They don't have to be clean and dirty. One could be clean, and then the second one could be a louder version of that. Or you can have some extreme sounds between the clean and dirty ranges based on what's in here. The pedal also allows you to do preamp only or IR only. Today I'm using it as preamp and IR, so I'm going to switch between the two channels within here. Something else to note is as you are making edits, this automatically saves your settings, and it takes about 2 seconds to do so. So if you make a change to your setting and then you hit the button before 2 seconds have passed, it's not going to remember those settings and it's going to revert back to what you had before. So something to keep in mind as you're tweaking through this. If you do things real quick like I do, if you make a change to the IR2, give yourself 2 seconds before you channel select and go over and make a change to the other channel. So what we'll look at is the ES8's internal settings and how to do this, because it's a little bit different than the way that I had to set it up in order to channel switch between the channels on the Angry Driver. The goal was to just do the exact same thing with the IR2 and use this button right here, and you can see I was successful. It is different than setting up the Angry Driver to change channels. The Angry Driver's dual distortions. You can set up 2 different distortion sounds. The IR2 is just looking at a signal a different way. So what exactly am I talking about, and where did I go in order to make that change? So the first thing you're going to want to do is on your ES8, go to your edit button. You see it takes you into patch. Okay, so you have options to scroll left and right with the arrows. Give you a quick refresher in case you haven't messed with this for a while, okay? And what we're going to look for right now is play option. We're going to hit enter, and we're going to go over 2 times with the right arrow. And I'm currently using control output 3. I'm using control output 1 for the Angry Driver. And as you can see, that says LAT or latch. Over here, I had to come and change this to pulse. So how do you do that? You hit the enter button and it brings that cursor down. And now I can use the plus and minus to change. Well, right now I'm changing the wrong one, I want to scroll over to Control 3 so that the cursor is blinking under number 3, and then you can change with a plus or minus what we want. And what we're looking for is not latch. If you're using the Angry driver, you set it to latch. For this, it's looking for a pulse to tell it what it's doing, and then it's going to then stay in that state. Okay, so from here, we can hit exit, and we're going to come back up to our control setting. If you wanted to do a different output, you can still come over here and select any of them. Like if you wanted to make Control 4 or Control 5 or even Control 6, that you can do that. Now remember, you need a TRS cable at breakout, which would be a male TRS cable in that breaks out to 2 TS ends, and then you would plug into the side of your IR2, which is your channel select side right here. So that's what I have in here, and you can see when I take it out, the pedal is actually going to operate differently. So here, in its standard mode without a cable in there, you have to actually access the foot switch and change channels. If you are like me and you don't want to just do that, you want to do everything with one button press, you're going to want to use a TS cable on the inside. And now if you're using another foot switch like an FS7 or something like that, make sure it's set to momentary. This doesn't want to have a latch thing, or you're going to end up hitting the pedal twice in order to activate that state, and it will never really translate properly. Okay, so I have these FS7s on my board. They are set to momentary. I'll show you those settings. I'll just show you where they are right now. Both of these are over. I have polarity to 1, and I have the mode all the way over to the left when you're looking at it that way. So something else to think about, after we edit our play option, we want to just see what that control expression is already assigned to do. For example, you may have not messed with your ES8 for a while and forgotten you have assigned a certain control to be system. So you want to come back over here and see what it is doing. So Control 3 input is free for me to program at any different point. I do not have it assigned to just a system thing, and so that's something you're going to want to check to make sure if you're having any trouble trying to get this to work. And if you are wanting to make another button such as current number, this is where you would then go and change that. Cate or category, you would go up to external control, see all the different things that you can select to make the category of this particular move. This is going to be an external control move. The target is going to actually be Control 3, which is where I have it. This is where you would assign it to whatever it is that you wanted it to be. If you wanted it to be your Control 5 output or your Control 6, this is where you would do that. Because I have it going out of number 3 right now, if I made current number that, now I can test it by hitting the current number. I'm hitting the current number, and it is doing what I need it to do. So if I didn't have it in that pulse mode, it would toggle in a different way. It would just not stay in that state, and it would have trouble as it selects the new patch. Okay, so I don't really want it to do that, so I'm going to completely exit out of here. I'm not going to make any changes. So I'm going to come back over to my green patch here, and you can see I have a red patch saved right here. When I click over to number 2, I have stored this maneuver. If I wanted to now save it as green, I can hit that button and save that patch in that state. You can do it real quickly by doing a memory manual. Hold that down a couple of times, and now that is in green. And when I recall that patch, it will stay green. Now, if I hit Control that I have assigned to change that channel, and then do the same thing, hold down memory, keep it here, hit it twice to save it to that exact same state. Now it will store it in red. So I will go back and forth here to go from one channel to another on my patches. And if I'm in a patch, I have this switch now automatically defaulting through here. If I want to assign a different switch, like I said, I would go into my assignment. I would, from my patch, hit Edit, go to Control Expression, and then go to whichever assignment it was that I wanted to edit. So if I didn't want it to be current number, like let's see, I think I have a free one here somewhere. Yeah, so if I wanted this to be a completely different button, this is where you would do it. You need to activate the switch by turning it on, and you want to go ahead and keep it in toggle. The only place you have to change it to pulse is where I showed you at the beginning, at the actual play option setting. And then you can, again, make this whatever button you want it to be. And then you make sure the category is set to E control and that the target is control 3 or whichever output you have that set for. So as I scroll through, we're still seeing proper channel changes. Yay for that. It can be a little confusing. Anybody that's tried to decipher a BOSS manual, the BOSS manuals can be a little bit like, wait, what does that mean exactly? And we're looking at something older, trying to work with something newer, right? So I'm doing this in order to hopefully help out the very few of you that probably have an ES, or maybe that are looking for options on the IR2. There's so many demo videos of it already. I'm not going to run a demo of it, but I will run through the sounds that I picked just to show you what I'm doing. And then I'll talk real quick about how I'm using this in place of an actual amp. Okay, so the way that I have it right now is that the green channel is Fender Twin. And when I click over to a patch that's dirty, I'm pretty sure that I'm on high gain. That's really it. That's great. I'm not going to get all into editing patches and all that kind of stuff on the ES8. There's a million videos on that. There's a million videos on the amp and cab IR2 already. It was amazing how many came out right off the bat on this thing. The way that I wanted to use this and what sold me on it really was the simplicity of it, setting up two different amp channels and switching back and forth between them. As much as I love MIDI and diving into MIDI and programming delays and chorus sounds and things like that, I don't like doing that with an amp. I like to set up a nice core tone and then augment it with a couple of drives or compression, whatever, or find a nice high gain channel and switch over to that. And so having the ability to store not just channel switch between one amp sound. You know, like when I first heard about the IR2, I thought I would really want the clean of that Fender, but I don't want the dirty of the Fender. When I watched a video or two and saw that you could store the clean channel, or even just store the same version just louder and use your pedals and have that as a boost, right there drops the need for a boost pedal, just being able to go between two identical sounding channels, but just one is a bit louder for your volumes, and then your rhythm channel for when there's vocals. You know, the options are endless, and being able to switch it with your pre-made patches in your already cared for ES8 board. This expands things a little. You set it up very similar to how you would for your 4-cable method for your amp, okay? I know somebody on the ES8 forum was asking, hey, how do I integrate this into my rig? How I have this set up, I have a pass-through that's set to the volume loop. I have the volume loop activated after every one of my drives. I'm sending the output of the volume loop to that pass-through. And now instead of going to the input of the amp, obviously I'm going to the input of the IR2. And then I'm using what would be the send of my amp. I'm using that cable. I can just use the same cable and plug it into the output. I'm just using output A and sending that back into the patch bay, which then hits the return of the V loop. For me, the V loop is always active, and it's always after my drives, and it's always before my modulations, most of my modulations. Once it hits that volume return, it hits everything after it. Okay, you place the V loop however you need to. I have the V loop. If you want to see my settings, you can see loop structure. I have the V loop here. So I have, well, in this particular one, I have modulation before. This is the must-have phaser on it. So I like phaser before, but generally what I'll do is I'll have everything after. So if we go here to this one, everything after the amp is going to be modulation. So 6, 7, and 8, they're going to be, 6 is going to be my boost, 7 is going to be modulation, 8 is delay. My reverb is running after the ES8. So basically what I've done is used the volume loop for my amplifier, and instead of using the input cable to the amp, I use the input cable to the IR2, and then instead of using the send cable from the 4-cable method, I use the send cable and pop it over here to the output. So the IR2 is now returning back into the ES8 and will then hit everything beyond that. And then the stereo outputs of the ES8 feed my reverb, and then the stereo outputs of the reverb are going right into my interface. And I can now use my live pedal board directly with the IR2 and switch between two really good sounds without having to mess around with MIDI or do anything like that. And I can assign it to any one of the switches, and I can store those changes accordingly within my ES8 so that it follows along. If you're going to do this, you're going to want to go over your assignments and make sure that you don't have whatever button you're assigning to be this switch, that you don't have it double assigned, because that'll really start making the patches, funky, weird. I would recommend taking your bass patch, whatever your core patch is that you work with, like almost all the time, the one you're most familiar with, and using that, save it somewhere as in a completely new bank, a whole new area, and tweak that. Don't tweak anything for your amp ones. Mess with this for a little while until you get familiar with the control and what assigns you've turned off and things like that. I had to turn a couple of things off because I noticed that I had that control 3 already assigned to a couple of other things, and it was sending double switches, and it was keeping it on the red channel all the time. So it was like, wait, well, I have this stored as green. Oh, I had extra assigns on. So if you're troubleshooting why that might be happening, check your assignments. If it's not staying the way that it should on the amp channel, make sure that whatever control output you have is set to pulse. Everything else that you're going to be using can just stay at toggle. Okay, you don't need to put anything else at momentary. I really love having an amp in a Boss size pedal and being able to tuck it away in my board and just not have to touch it. Just like with the Angry Driver, I found 2 settings that I like, switch between them. Find 2 settings that I really like, here, switch between them. And if I ever get to the option of wanting to just use this live instead of with an amplifier and a cabinet, I can just turn off the IR within the pedal and then just plug straight into the return, and that way I will have bypassed the preamp of that amplifier, and I'll be using this as the preamp. Just keep it on all the time so that you have volume control. And it gives a lot of options, and it gives it in familiar territory where you can integrate it real easily to your ES8 board. So hopefully this helped you out if you are one of the people that is hanging on for dear life to your built-up ES8 board, this IR2 can bring a little bit of new zest. It'll breathe a new life into your old pedal board that you probably love, just like I love mine. I really do hope that this helps you out. If it does, please consider subscribing. Thank you very much. My name is Double, and I appreciate you being here. All right, take care.